Welcome back everyone. So I figured we'd cover off something a little bit different today. Not just cars, engines and all that kind of stuff. Let's go a bit geeky. Now, some of you remember that table in the last video. There was something on there which I think we should talk about. And that something is, of course, this. This is the iFlight Nazgul V2 F5X Evoque 5-inch FPV quad. Just rolls off the tongue. Now of course you can buy these in a box. They come ready-made. They are bind and fly, a B&F unit. What does that actually mean? What is the DJI O3 unit? What's FPV all about? And more importantly, will it mod? Okay, so here is the unit. This is the iFlight Nazgul F5X V2 Evoque 5-inch FPV quad. Now this has of course been modified. There's a few things I've done. In order to find out and show you what I've done, I thought we'd take some of it apart and give you a look at the inside, some of the gubbins. So I do have a 3D printer which we'll cover off in another episode, and that started out life as a Creality CR10. You know, Creality have been making 3D printers for quite some time, and the CR10 was available 3 or 4 years ago. I saw one, really liked the idea, so I thought I'd get one. Of course that's modified as well, so it's not really much of a CR10 left, running all sorts of other goodies on it. The main board is gone. It's running a Duet Wi-Fi board and all sorts of other bits, different stepper motors, hot ends, you name it, it's all been fiddled with. Anyway, the point was a lot of this has been 3D printed on my 3D printer, so we have areas like the feet that have been reprinted. This rear unit here, this tail unit, which originally, let's get that in focus, originally is for a walk snail unit. I modified it to have the DJI O3 antenna fitted on here, but still maintain the power port. Also to have included a GPS receiver in there as well. So there's lots of scope with these drones and lots of STL files that you can download off of places like Thingiverse that will satisfy most of your needs for any components you want. And then if there's nothing that quite does the job, you can always modify that STL and make whatever you fancy. So these, when they come standard, they don't have GPS. The one that I bought did have the DJI O3 unit, and the O3 is basically a high clarity digital FPV system, both for the control and the audio visual. Now for the DJI kit you do need to be running the DJI Goggles V2 or the Goggles 2 plus the FPV Controller 2 as well to run on the O3 unit, and if you don't have any of those then of course you're stuck. I wanted to go a slightly different way, however. I wanted to utilise the, I'll show you, the Goggles 2, we can see here. This is the DJI Goggles 2. I wanted to use those for the high definition video, but I did want something with a bit more control for the radio unit. So I've ended up with this, which is a TX16S. This course has been modified, of course it has. This was originally running OpenTX software. It's now running Edge TX with a bunch of additional interesting Lua scripts and mods on there. This is all running ExpressLRS as well, so it's an internal ExpressLRS module, and that's what I wanted to use for the radio. Now, back to the quad. The original unit, as we can see here, we have a Blitz F7 Mini stack. This is basically an F7 radio flight controller, which runs Betaflight, and then below it is the electronic speed controller, again part of this F7 stack. Now, the firmware I'm running on the flight controller is Betaflight version 4.4 release candidate 4. That's working ever so well. The first thing I went to do was to add on the GPS, this unit here. So it was a case of modifying this original walk snail back end to take the GPS, I think it's a B220 GPS unit, and then the wiring goes in to the ESC just down here, and there's a pin out which I followed online to get all that to work. So we have GPS in here as well. This enables things like GPS rescue to work, as well as having real-time ground speed and so on. The next thing to get running is just up inside here. May be able to make it out. Just in the very bottom there is a Matek R24D, so Diversity antennas, hence the two antennas here. Diversity ExpressLRS or ELRS unit, and that ExpressLRS unit that's in there is bound to, you got it, the TX16S.
Welcome to HTX. Switch warning.
Just get these switches
Flight
configured.
mode stabilized.
There we are.
Turtle mode off.
So if I was to plug in
Off.
the drone, we get the GPS flashing away in the bottom there, and that red light that you can just see further down inside the tail of the unit, that is the ExpressLRS receiver. Now, the version of ExpressLRS I'm running is 3.2.1, and they're bound using a pre-shared key between the two units. So there you have it. Now, what has been modified?
Telemetry lost.
What has been modified specifically on this drone from stock? Well, I've reprinted some feet, as I said, because I wanted to have matching colours. So these were printed in a TPU, 1.75mm TPU on the modded CR10 3D printer. We've got addition of the BN220, that's the module there for the GPS, that's been added. The new rear tail section to incorporate the BN220 and the Diversity antennas into one module, as well as retaining both of the DJI O3 antennas. One of these is for video transmission and the other one is for control. And if I decide that I want to go back to the DJI controllers for whatever reason, I can just take this little cable here. You just see that, just hiding underneath there, there's a little plastic cable with 5 pins on it, 2 which are used, and I can swap that cable into the flight controller here. That would disconnect the ELRS, ExpressLRS Matek R24D system, and re-engage the DJI O3 unit, which is this part here, for control using the DJI remote controllers. So you've got the best of both worlds, really. The reason for this step down transformer here, and that's exactly what it is, it takes 6S power, because this drone is 6S and the ESC and motors are 6S as well. There's the Zing motors. And it steps that down to 4S, so the DJI O3 unit can actually function. It is designed to work on 4S down to 2S, I believe. So let's go ahead and pop all this back together, because there's not a lot more exciting stuff to see under here. And we'll cover off why I've made these changes, why I've decided to modify this. Last thing worth mentioning as well are these props. These are ethics props designed by Mr. Steele. For those of you who don't know who Mr. Steele is, definitely do a YouTube search. you will find all sorts of extremely fun videos from Mr. Steele. He's incredible. In the FPV world, the guy is just amazing. So they're his watermelon props. Not particularly high pitch. They're not amazing at everything. They're just good at everything. They don't excel in any one area. They just do everything very well. Which means for me as a beginner drone pilot, and when I say beginner, I really do mean that. In the world of FPV, I am an absolute novice. Now, when it comes to drones generally, I have had a lot of experience with things like the Parrot Bebop and some of the GPS-based drones that we're all used to, the DJI and Mavics and so on. But when it comes to what I would term as a proper drone, proper racing drone, or freestyle quad, such as this, I'm definitely a noob. And to get me off on the right foot, I decided to get myself involved in a game called Liftoff. And Liftoff is an FPV simulator. And the simulator allows you to plug your controller in and learn how to fly FPV. And honestly, it's been absolutely invaluable. I've probably spent 35 to maybe nearly 40 hours on the simulator, and it meant the first time that I took this up, and this is my third drone recently that I've purchased, the DJI Mini 3 Pro, the DJI Avata, which is a Cinewhoop, and this one. I never even flew the Cinewhoop in full manual mode before, so it really was a case of diving in feet first with this and giving it a go. Right, let's power it up quickly so you can see it running, and then I'll dig out a video of my absolutely terrible flying and pop that up there for you to watch.
Welcome to HTX. Flight mode stabilize. Turtle mode off. Disarmed off.
Right, so on the controller we're going to get a beep if we're connected, and then when we're connected we'll be able to arm the quad. I would not recommend doing this inside normally, but I'm going to anyway. There we can see it's armed.
Disarmed.
And there it's all disarmed. Of course, I can go through what we've done on the controller. There are a bunch of very cool scripts that have been installed on this controller. The FM2M toolbox is probably one of the most awesome scripts that I've seen run on here. This gives you a whole wealth of information when you're in flight. Not that you can see any of this, of course, because you've got your goggles on, but you know, some really good detail in here. I'll drop a link towards this guy's website, the developer of this toolbox, and also where you can look at getting the Nazgul from. I got the Nazgul from Unmanned in the UK.
Telemetry lost.
But again, I'll drop that info in there. Anyway, enough rabbiting on. That was a brief look over of the Nazgul F5 Evoque V2. It's called the F5X as well because it's an X frame. You can get this in a dead cat version. The dead cat version, the front motors and arms are actually swept back and out ever so slightly, and that gives you a different style of geometry where the centre of gravity is further back, but it also means you're sweeping the props out the view of the main camera down here. You can run a GoPro. I do choose to run a GoPro because I find it helps with the weight, but also I just like editing the GoPro footage. So anyway, like I said, enough. Let's get on to some of that footage and see how this thing flies.